Hey everyone, it's Selena here. Welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, we're going to talk about how I started my clothing brand with almost $0. So if you're new to following me and you have no idea what I'm talking about, my name is Selena Sanders and I am an upcycling fashion designer based in Altadena, California. And I have now been in business for almost 4 years. I started my clothing business right at home in the height of the pandemic. So I'm happy to say that I am still making a living doing this job. It's the best job I've ever held in my entire life. It's opened so many opportunities for me, the people that work with me, and for my family. Today, I wanted to share how I got started. Hopefully, this will inspire you also to start your business by creating and being able to sell the art or your passion. So how did I do it with the very, very little money? Obviously, starting any business or any hobby for that matter will cost money, but the difference between maybe starting a business a long time ago versus now, where social media is so easily accessible, or global reach is so much more accessible than it used to be. It's much easier now to be able to create something and be able to share this with a big group of people for almost no money. So of course, everything that I'm sharing with you as a big disclaimer is just my experience, and it is what I know and want to share with you, but I am not a financial expert. I am not a business expert. I am simply an artist. So that being said, I will give you advice along the way, but it's more like story time almost, to just sort of tell you what I've experienced from the beginning of me creating this business all the way to now. And there is, 4 years is not a long time, but it is a significant amount of time where I've gathered a lot of information that hopefully will be useful to you. The first thing that I want to touch on is taking a passion and being able to now making that into your full-time living. This is not a new concept. You may have already watched videos about this concept. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that, but the one thing I can say is, from a monetary standpoint, that really helps, because if you've been passionate for something for a while, you probably have already gathered all the materials that you need in order to maybe take your passion into the next step. And for me, for example, I had been collecting vintage for a very long time. I love thrift stores. I've always been going to antique markets, estate sales, and all the things where you can find the vintage pieces that I use in our business. And I had basically collected almost like a shed full of these things from the very, very beginning, even before I started this business. I didn't have to buy materials because I already had the materials available to me from my years of travel and from my years of thrifting. Now, if you are thinking about starting an upcycling clothing brand too, you don't even have to start with buying material. You could just look around you. I'm sure you have old bed sheets and old curtains, or maybe some old home goods or whatever it may be that you can actually use and utilize to begin either creating samples of your designs or actually creating the garments that you would like to share with the world. I actually have a very cute story to share with you about how I was able to get a hold of free vintage materials for my business. So probably at the second year of me being in business, I was written up by Vogue magazine. That was a big highlight of my career. It was a surprise to me that they were even noticing what I was doing. In the article, I had mentioned that I lived in Altadena. And so my husband posted the article on a Nextdoor within the Altadena group and had said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that my wife was written up in Vogue. She mentioned Altadena, and I wanted to let you all know that she's just very proud to live here." That's all he said. And of course, I got a slew of messages from all of these women that had lived in the area. And a lot of them just had a common thing, basically saying, "I love that. I read the magazine. I think what Selena's doing is fabulous. And I have a ton of vintage materials that my grandma had sent me a long time ago, or I have a lot of stuff from my mom, or things in my attic are sitting." And people were just so open and trying to open up their attics and their basement. And basically, we got so many donations of fabrics around that time. And I'm not trying to say that you need an article and you need to be written up somewhere for you to be able to maybe go to your community and ask for donation. And you can just post a picture of what you've created. Here's an example of my work. Your specialty is upcycling bed sheets. Well, maybe it's a good time for you to reach out to neighbors as well and post it on your community platform and say, I am in need of this. So number 2, and this is only pertaining obviously to making clothes, is sewing machines. Our business use a single needle sewing machine, and we also use an overlock, whether it's a 3-thread or a 4-thread overlock machine. And those are really just the 2 machines that we need. I've always had a sewing machine because I picked up sewing at a very young age. It was already something I didn't need to purchase. And again, so that costed me something at some point in my life, but it's not something I had to purchase for this business per se. If you, for example, are having a hard time right now financially, like, you can always go to your local library and rent out sewing machines. Call around within your area or county and find out if you could borrow a sewing machine. So really, borrowing a sewing machine from a library is a zero-cost way to be able to start your business. Number 3, maybe mannequins, sewing supplies, and all that. Again, I had accumulated all of these throughout my time. I had been gifted a professional dress form by my pattern maker at my old job, who was basically quitting the industry. So he gave me a call and I just picked them up. Facebook Marketplace is a really great place to be able to find free stuff, whether you're looking for art supplies, sewing supplies, and all the things that you might need. Facebook Marketplace and Buy Nothing groups are really great for that. We are really living in a great time for a small business owner to start a business with almost $0. And a dress form is not necessarily important in the beginning. I had basically used my own body as a way to fit the garments. So now that you have all your materials and sewing machines figured out, you will now have to make a prototype of your design. Back in the day, before the time of the internet, believe it or not, people used to have to create a collection of clothing in order to debut or launch a brand. And it was a way bigger production than it is today. Well, the good news is, just like I did, I only started with literally one silhouette. And that is a tea towel puff sleeve top, which is sort of the signature piece that I am known for. And I started out with this garment because it's something that I like to wear personally. And I had an abundance of tea towels. Tea towels are one of my favorite materials to work with. And it just made a lot of sense for that time. And so I just focused on this one silhouette. And with a prototype, that includes someone who knows how to draft a pattern, cut fabric, and then sew this piece to put it together. And in my case, I spent $0 on this because I did all of those tasks myself. Fortunately for me, I went to fashion school and I worked in the industry for over 16 years. And so I already knew how to do all of those things that are required to make a prototype. And so I didn't have to incur that expense. But for example, if you're unable to do all of those things, these are also things that you can learn through taking courses, simple ones that we offer on Domestika. I'm actually a teacher on Domestika. There's a lot of classes that you can take there to learn how to draft a pattern, to sew a garment. You can also use YouTube. I personally use YouTube for a lot of things even today. YouTube is a wealth of knowledge. So if you have a style in particular that you would like to make a prototype to base your business around, then YouTube can be your friend. But if you feel like you're not confident enough to take on those skills yourself, then this will be the time where you want to invest in a good pattern maker, a sewist, and also a cutter. One amazing piece of advice I have for you, you can contact your local tailor that may reside within a dry cleaning service. There are a lot of incredible sewists that work for dry cleaners, and it's always a great idea to reach out to them and see if they have connections that could help you. I know a lot of friends who start off this way, and it's pretty accessible in most areas. First, it is really important to also think about things that are not necessarily material to bring your fashion brand into fruition. That includes identifying your audience, building a brand presence, as well as being able to tell or narrate a story. For me personally, I already had established kind of what I had wanted to do in terms of production, and that was custom made, made to order. I started my business mainly with this model. And mainly it was a necessity because I didn't have the manpower. I was sewing, cutting, and doing the pattern work for all my orders when I first started. And so it was important for me to be able to establish to my customer that I had a lead time for a lot of these custom work. And I gave myself a lot of time to be able to fulfill those orders, especially because it was just me at that time. But of course, as I grew my business, that's when I started to hire people and I started to delegate that work. And with that, your business will sort of change as the demand for the product grows with it. A really good way to brand the business is with a really cool logo. Now, in my case, for example, this is sort of one thing that I did not invest a lot of money in. My logo is very, very simple, and I didn't really pay anybody to put it together. It was just a font I picked, and my actual label is literally black and white right now. And that is because it was a choice for me to make it as classic and simple as possible, because I felt like I wanted to keep it sort of in contrast to the maximalist and overly colorful clothing that I had. But if that is something that you think is really important for you, of course, that's something that you will need to spend money on. And you can also try to figure out if you have friends or family members that are really good into graphic design to be able to create you that logo initially. The really good news is as you grow your business, you can continue to expand and change as you grow. Like for example, I am entering, like I said, my 4th year of business now in the next 6 months, and I might be wanting to spend some money on updating my logo. There's a lot of really cool ways that you can utilize what's around you, especially if you're thinking about an upcycling fashion brand. I've seen people use hang tags like vintage playing cards or the back of cereal boxes, and a lot of really cool creative ways to utilize recycling. And I think people nowadays are very accepting of the fact that you can be very creative with hang tags and labels. When I first started, I actually just used like fabric markers, the ones that don't wash out. And I drew my name or wrote my name in grosgrain ribbon, like just like a linen color one. And that one worked for me for a while until I decided to order actual labels. So there's definitely ways for you to be creative and making sure you don't spend a lot of money on this part of your business. Overall, there is a lot of sweat equity involved in starting a fashion brand, actually more so than any monetary amount you can imagine. There is a lot of things that you have to think about, like drafting a business plan, identifying a market or a need for your business out there. For me, for example, at that time in 2020, there were only maybe a handful of brands that were doing the work kind of similar to what I was doing. Now it's, 2024, and there's so much more people who are doing this kind of work now. And so if you are thinking about doing upcycling, you have to do your research, figure out what is there that may be a white space for something that you are offering. Because at the end of the day, if you are just there to basically compete or basically copy the model of someone existing at this point, it might not be the wisest choice, especially because that person may, or that business may already have been doing it a much longer time than you, and they're so much more ahead. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be inspired but what other people do and the ones that you are inspired from, like all the artists that maybe are giving you inspiration. But at the end of the day, success mainly is something where if you have something unique to offer and you can kind of add to the conversation of upcycling fashion in a new way, I think that that will also set you up for more immediate success if you do it, because people have this insatiable appetite for freshness and newness. After all, this is fashion, so we know that trends come and go. It might just be a matter of offering something refreshing. So the other thing too to think about is just marketing in general. Marketing is almost a free thing. There are so many great platforms nowadays: TikTok, Instagram, obviously YouTube. where you can share your pieces and your creations online. Make sure to ask friends and family to wear your pieces so that you don't have to hire models. Even to this day, actually, I have spent $0 on models. I have spent $0 on photo shoots, although maybe this year I'm thinking about creating some photo shoots because the editorials and the beauty that it comes to styling garments is something that I've missed for a while now. But this is very possible. You don't have to. For a long time, even to this day, I have spent $0 on marketing my garments as far as like photographer costs. I just use my iPhone, just like I'm using my iPhone right now to film this YouTube video. Another way to advertise is gifting your product to micro influencers out there in social media. And I think there's something really amazing about being able to reach out to maybe your favorite influencer. They don't have to have like a massive reach where they have millions and millions of followers. If you guys don't know me and this is the first time you're finding me, I actually got my break from gifting a top to Beth Jones. It's really amazing to be able to reach out to this community. This is speaking from personal experience. My Instagram right now has over 120,000 users, but I also feel like even when I only had 1,000, that's not really a metric of like your success as a designer. So you should never use that as some sort of judgment to like look at those numbers. When I started out, I literally had 200 followers on my Instagram, but because of sharing and being able to like have people be so generous with their platform and their own reach, I was able to grow that kind of like just gradually over time. And I just worked from home. I was using my son's bedroom and we kind of moved him to sleep with us for almost a year. So I could take over his room to be my studio full time. So you can also be creative in figuring out the space. You don't have to rent space to do this job. And obviously when you grow and you feel like your business can handle that expense, then yes, getting into a studio. Later on, the money that I was able to generate allowed me to be able to get reconstructing my garage, and it's now become my studio. So let's talk about where are you going to sell these goods and the platforms to use. When I started this company, I just sold on Instagram. I didn't even have a website per se. I sold everything through DMs or just posted what I had on my feed, and I would do a sale or do a live on Instagram. And that's how I sort of started at the very beginning. With that comes a lot of work. You have to constantly check your messages and be on top of it real time. That's when I decided to go officially and get a website. And I had already owned my domain since my teaching days. It was my portfolio as an artist and as a fashion designer, and I just converted that into a store. And I think that there's a lot of places for you to be able to find website hosts like Shopify and others out there. I'm not quite sure what might be best for you, but just go ahead and check. If you feel like you don't want to go on your own in terms of a domain, obviously there's Etsy, there's Depop, so many other platforms out there. For me personally, I just never went that route. Of course, going to physical markets and physical spaces. I have attended about 3 markets my entire 4 years of being in business. Everything has always been online, but I love attending markets because it's really a great way to meet people. It's a great way for people to try on the clothes, even if perhaps they haven't purchased from you or have no intentions of purchasing from you. Just the experience and the interaction will hopefully earn you more customers as you grow. So along with planning for your business plan, just think about, again, all of your expenses, create a budget. All of these things are super easy to do with the help of Google Docs and templates out there right now. I always made sure to list down all of the materials that I purchased, or if I had any expenses like shipping and packaging and all of that. Make sure to just keep track of these expenses, because at the end of the day, there are taxes involved. You may have to file for an LLC. These are things that I'm not going to cover in this video, but also things to keep in mind as you're building a legitimate business. As you grow, as I mentioned earlier, you will be able to realize that you're not going to be able to do all of these things on your own. So it will be very important for you to find either someone to delegate work to, either the sewing portion of it, the cutting portion, do the photography of your work, or hire someone if you're going to be selling your goods physically at a market. But those are the exciting things about growing a business, as you end up having to hire people and you're able to be empowered enough to provide a living for others as well. Expenses can sometimes be very stressful for like a small business, but at the same time, it really does serve as this sort of inspiration and motivation for you to continue to do the work that you do. So this is really kind of the story as to how I built the business from almost $0. If you calculate all of that, of course it's an amount of money to start a business, but because it was a passion I had and I had already sort of built towards this business, to me, the cost is very minimal. I didn't really have to come up with something right out of my pocket. My dream for everybody is to be able to find work that they're passionate about. There's also a lot of challenges for a business owner. It's not always glamorous because that's not really how it works. Having your business includes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You may have heard this already as you're doing more research about this topic. There were many, many sleepless nights. I had sacrificed a lot of time away from my own family to be able to continue this business and sort of to build it from the ground up. Just be very smart and strategic about investing money into your own business, because at the end of the day, if, for example, it doesn't work out, then you don't feel a sense of regret. You're blaming yourself maybe for something that, you know, millions of people experience all the time. Not all businesses end up working. Thinking about money is a reality of life, and it is something that we all have to do as adults with responsibility, but you cannot always just think about that first and foremost. If you're stressed out so much about making money from this business, then it's something that you're not going to love to do anymore. It's something you will resent. And as a creative person, the output will not yield the best results. Always reverse the two together. Start with a product, feel happy about the product, enjoy doing the work, and the business will follow. Okay, I think we've covered most of everything. If there is for some reason something that I have not covered, make sure to let me know in the comments. Also, I want to know, are you thinking about starting your own clothing brand? The beauty of upcycling is there is an abundance of these materials. It is really much better for the planet. You can also start a business with very little money. And I hope that you find this video useful. Please make sure to comment, like the video, and subscribe. I will see you at the next one. Bye.